Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a botany main lesson to share with you today. This is our live education Waldorf curriculum for the botany main lesson block, and today we're going to be working on a lesson on monocots and dicots. And so we're doing the introduction, so we're going to be introducing the monocots, and today's lesson is going to be on bulbs and lilies. And we decided to use this book called Botanicum as illustration inspiration for this lesson. It's a beautiful book that has gorgeous illustration and some content, but I primarily really love this book for the illustrations, and it has been a source of inspiration for many of our main lessons. So we're going to be working on onions and just the different varieties of these kinds of bulbs, the kind that you can enjoy. And so we are going to be illustrating some of these images here. I'm thinking the onion, the red onion, and the garlic, because that coordinated really well with our actual lesson. So we're going to be using our main lesson book, which is 9.5 inches by 12.5 inches. They are from a child's dream, and they have blank pages on both sides. They are separated by onion skin in between each page to protect your artwork. I do prefer to leave the pages without once we're done with our lesson. I do like to be able to see both pages, but I do keep them in here as we're working on another one, another image, and another lesson, so that we don't ruin the previous illustrations. As you can see here, as you start to write, you can see some transfer. And we have used some chalk pastels, and some chalk pencils. And I do like the Sargent Art square chalk pastels. This set is getting a little bit old, but it still works just great. But we have gone through a lot of our earth tones, which tend to go first. We also have chalk pencils, and these ones are General's pastel chalk. And these are really nice for detailed work. They aren't as soft and as blendable, but they still do blend, and you still want to protect your work when you are done with a matte fixative, an art fixative. That way your images won't smear or get onto other pages. All right, so let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is choose the colors that I want to use for this illustration. I have a little piece of paper here where I can check the colors as I'm pulling them and also clean them. As you can see, some of them have gotten a little bit dusty. I'm going to start by doing the garlic bulb with the shoots coming up from the garlic, and you can see how quickly this illustration comes together using the chalk pastels. I am working in a main lesson book, and these measure 9.5 inches by 12.5 inches. You can find them at a child's dream. They just have blank white pages with onion skin dividing the pages, which I usually remove since I like a 2-page spread. I am working in a main lesson book rather than working on the chalkboard for a few reasons. You can see how easily this would come together working on a chalkboard, and you wouldn't have to make it very large either. But I've come to enjoy working in a main lesson book now that I'm just working with one student. This way I can have her look at these illustrations in the same format that she is going to be copying them into her main lesson book. Working on a chalkboard, I'm working on a dark surface with chalks, and sometimes that changes the highlights and the lowlights, and using the dark chalkboard as part of the illustration versus using a white piece of paper. So I've enjoyed using my white paper, my white main lesson books, and using a smaller scale rather than our chalkboard, which is 4 feet by 6 feet. I apologize that I'm a little bit off screen at the moment. I don't realize this right away, but in a moment I will lift up the paper so that you can see where I'm working on the bulb of the garlic. There we go. So for this, for the detailed work, I'm using the pastel pencils, and I'm finding them to be really helpful in blending the colors together, as well as adding some dimension and some details. I'm copying the illustration out of the book Botanicum, and there's a lot of white highlights that I'm using a black pencil for instead in order to give it some dimension. And I think that it turns out really well in the end, though I wish that I could add more white highlights to mimic the image from Botanicum a little bit better. So in working in a main lesson book rather than on the chalkboard, it allows us to move forward with the next lessons. And even if my daughter hasn't copied this illustration yet, she can still refer back to the main lesson book, since we do a 2 to 3 day learning cycle with our lessons, where we present the new lesson at the end of the day after we've done the work for our previous lesson, which includes illustration and written work. And then on the following couple of days, then we will begin to do our illustration and our written work while still presenting new lessons. So having a main lesson book with the illustrations means that we can move on to the new lessons, even if we need a little bit more time to do the illustrations and to write the lesson content. I hope you enjoyed this botany lesson, and don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more information, as well as links to the materials and the resources that I've used. You can find the link to that blog post down in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.